Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, the couples tell all. Let's watch.
Welcome.
Hello. Get over it.
Okay, so Tatiana, what did you think about those things Mohamed said about you and your girlfriends? He called you guys weird, said you were stupid, had your boobs hanging out. What did you think?
Well, that he has his opinion and we have ours.
That's a great response. How often do you hear that on this show? Well, okay, you have your opinion and I have mine. You know, imagine Georgie and Michael at that picnic. Georgie's like, okay, well, you have your opinion and I have mine, and then da-da-da-da-da. Well, okay, agree to disagree. You have your opinion and I have mine. That's differentiation. That's the ability to say, okay, you can have your opinion and your feelings, and I don't agree, but that's okay. We can agree to disagree. Meaning also that you can control or manage your emotions. You know, it's hurtful to be insulted that way. But for Yve's friend, she's thinking strategically of like, well, I'm not going to get triggered. I know he's going to say things like that and has said things like that. And I can see it for what it is, which is either, I don't know how she sees it, but I see it as a cultural manifestation. There are different ideas about culture and body and sexuality, and that's okay. Every culture can have their own ideas as long as it doesn't harm other people. And Tatiana, Yve's friend, her ideas of sexuality as presented on the show, it's not harmful to anyone. But when it came to asking very pointed questions about sexuality, like porn and this sort of thing, I think that it could be argued that was harmful. They should have predicted that would potentially bother him and put him in an uncomfortable place. But the way that they dress and the things that they're interested in and the things they talk about with each other, there's nothing harmful about those things. There's just choices. So that's one way of looking at it, just cultural difference. Another way is that it's a sexist notion within some cultures, you know, certainly in the United States, that women need to confine themselves in certain ways to please men, and she might see it that way too. You'd be like, okay, well, I see it for what it is. I don't agree with it. I understand it as a cultural thing and in these following ways, and we will just agree to disagree. And so that's what she's doing. And I am impressed by her because earlier in the season when Yve was venting to her, especially in that one moment when the friend was crying there in the bar, the friend was not giving in to the undifferentiated triangulation temptations that a lot of the people on the show give into. She was able to not give into that and to be helpful and supportive of her friend, but also to speak from her own feelings. Instead of attacking Yve and saying, what's wrong with you? She's like crying and saying, I have tremendous pain for what you're going through, and I feel worried about the future, which is in all likelihood what a lot of the people, when they get triangulated, those are the primary feelings, and she was able to stick with that in a way that I was really happy that she's modeling that behavior for people.
Said you were stupid, had your boobs hanging out. What did you think?
Well, that he has his opinion and we have ours.
Do you think this kind of conversation is normal in any culture?
For us to...
Yeah, that's a valid question. That would be so for her, I don't know what she's going to say here, but she could say something like, well, for us to be curious and to ask isn't inherently harmful, but I understand for you, and so he's doing a classic triangulation thing. He's triangulating literally the entire world and the thousands of cultures around the world. He's saying, you are the abnormal one, I am the majority, and you are weird and I am right because I am of the majority. He's saying, instead of what is more healthy, her style of communicating would be for Mohamed to say something like, well, it just hurt my feelings that you didn't respect my culture or didn't take the time to get to know me and my preferences, and just sort of bulldozed with those questions in a group format. I was the only one there and y'all are coming at me, and it made me feel like you didn't really care about my feelings. He could say something like that, but instead he says what he said, which is, do you think any culture around the world would be okay with what you're doing?
To be brought into a situation. Are you going to let me finish?
For us, like...
Because I will answer your question.
Another good technique of like, I'll wait, I can wait, because if you want me to answer your question, I will. So I wonder what she does for a living, because this is almost professional level conflict management and de-escalation. because it's tempting to turn away and stonewall, like, fine, I'm not going to answer the question, or to talk over, or to escalate with the person, go back and forth quickly, like Jabri and John going back and forth. Instead, she's like, I'll wait. He's like, we got time.
Thank you. I think that this whole situation is unorthodox, so you are going to have unusual conversations.
It's not normal in American culture. I have so many American friends right now.
Again, he's triangulating all of America. America, we all understand, and every country has a variety of cultures. I mean, maybe there's one country like Luxembourg or something, I don't know, one of those real small countries that has what could be argued a monoculture or something. But anyway, point is that he's trying to say that she's stupid, that she's wrong for her beliefs. Now, she could highlight what he's getting at, which is what I said earlier. It's like, okay, well, I mean, the way we think is fine. I think there are many people that think like us, not that we need other people to think like us to validate us. And, Mohammed's contention here of like, I have many American friends that have said that you're weird. So you did a study of like every cultural pocket in the United States and found out that literally no one would act the way that they did. Anyway, but yeah, so Tatiana, the friend, could say, well, the way we were bulldozing you about it, we shouldn't have done that. But the way we think and the way we operate and the way we dress, there is nothing wrong with that, which there isn't.
Now, all of them told me that's not our culture.
Well, Jen,
we're not talking to people like that.
In this crowd, we do talk about sex. We're very open and empowered, and we don't see a problem with either sex talking about it.
You can talk about sex as much as you want,
right, but you're asking a question as far as why, so if you would like me to answer.
Yeah, I mean, so he's not doing great, but his overall point is a good one, which is, and he just said that, okay, you can do whatever you want, but the way he says it, it's, you don't have a right to ask me those questions, I think is what he's saying, or at least the way it's coming across. And she would be like, I can ask anyone anything I want, kind of a thing, within reason, of course. So I think if he would have said what I said earlier, like, it just hurt my feelings that you just bulldozed, I think she would have responded to that. So they seem to be escalating from here.
Sir, I would suggest you listen to the rest of the answer before over talking me, because if you just want to talk, you can talk by yourself. Go ahead.
It's like, this is
she apologized.
my sexual private life.
And then you have Yve trying to be a negotiator. It's just not working. So this is interesting, because I think it's more important what it reveals about them, right? Because for Tatiana, I'm going to take a guess and say that Tatiana and Yve are going to remain friends, and they just won't hang out with Mohamed ever. They'll do their squad things. And so it's more relevant for the two of them, because I think Yve wants to say something to him, but their dynamic doesn't allow for that.
And start asking about their sex life. The way that we all met is through studying Tantra, which I know some people can reduce it as just sex and it be a situation, but it's not that. We don't see sex as taboo or something as uncomfortable, but I do understand that there is cultures that find that very sacred and uphold it in a different way.
Do you think it was like a big shock for you?
Okay, she could extend that and say, we shouldn't have asked those pointed questions, because she's making this argument of Tantra and sexuality, which is a good point. But I don't think tantric practitioners walk around I think from her point of view, she's like, well, we're concerned about our friend, and we're interested in that. And we come from a place where it's not taboo and there's nothing wrong with talking about it. We understand that you come from a different culture. That's all great. But the questions they were asking, there's a different way to introduce that topic. It's like, so we come from a tradition where da-da-da, and we'd like to talk with you about sexuality, but if you don't want to, if you don't consent to that, then we don't want to force you to talk about anything. But, we're curious about this. Is it okay if we talk about it? Yeah, I mean, and he would say no, and then you wouldn't ask him questions. But that's not what they did. They just, at least the way it was edited, they just asked him in a very impulsive way, do you watch porn? Have you had sex before? Very personal questions that, frankly, even fairly liberal people regarding this topic would be like, whoa, I just met you. That's pretty, where's this headed? Because if I answer this question, this is the question you're leading with, like, what questions are coming after that, right?
You like to see that she's, ended up with someone who isn't open and is so conservative. Maybe that was a shock for you guys.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to say. Like, in our group of people, we didn't mean it as a bad thing. And I think we can all we're all learning from this.
You went over there.
Well, that's not even, didn't seem that, it did seem like they were judging him because he was saying he had never had sex before, if I remember the conversation right. And the squad, I get a kick out of saying squad, mostly because there was that scene where Mohamed is like, I don't like this squad. I'm not mocking him, but because I don't know, but he probably, he's coming to the United States and there's a lot of cultural things he's learning, a lot of words and little details about the culture, American English, American culture. He's like, oh, okay, so that's how they do those things. And for Yve and her friends, they call themselves the squad. And certainly there are other people that refer to that sort of thing, like Taylor Swift squad. Does she have a squad? I don't know. It's kind of a trend 10 years ago. It's like, oh, squad goals. Anyway, point is that Mohamed is using it like a universal noun. Like all people call their friends the squad. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? I thought it was funny in a non-humiliating way for Mohamed. He's trying to adopt the language. And to this day, my wife, Stacy, and I will every once in a while we'll just joke about the squad. I don't know. But anyway, it did seem like they were judging him because he was saying he hadn't had sex before. And they were astonished and like, well, how could you possibly know that Yve is the right one if you've never had sex before or something, or you've never had sex with someone else? Like, they were judging him. And that isn't, I think, within the tantric tradition to do that. They can't claim like, maybe Yve's friend is talking about the whole conversation because we could imagine that it was edited. But, the part that they showed us, I think he does deserve a little bit of an apology for that.
Because you don't know who I am. Did you know me when you figured out that I'm good in bed?
Did you know us? Wait, what?
Did you know me after you figured out that I'm good in bed?
God, yeah.
I think there might be a language barrier there or something. I don't know. Although he's kind of an odd duck in some ways, so who knows what's really going on there. But yeah, everyone's like, huh? What is he? So he's asking, do you know if I'm good in bed? Oh, I wonder if he felt like, because that was the judgment, right? Like, you've never had sex before. And at least it would be reasonable for someone in his position to interpret it as that he's inexperienced, he doesn't know what he's doing, and he doesn't know how to please Yve. They might even said something along those lines, right? Well, they did talk like that maybe when he wasn't around and then he saw the show, when the friends, the squad, were talking about like, is he any good? And so he's hurt by that, which he could communicate in a better way. But so I think he's trying to address that thing, I'm guessing, and it's coming out in this awkward, confusing way.
In the future, if anything makes you uncomfortable because it's so different culturally, please, just say like, hey, that's not acceptable to talk about my culture. Like, can we not talk about that?
Okay, so Yve's trying to help, and that's good. Hopefully Mohamed listens to that.
You didn't know Mohamed was a virgin until after when? That conversation?
After we consummated our relationship. Like, I just assumed he had a girlfriend in college.
Consummated? Why not just say until we had sex? I'm guessing Mohamed isn't going to be comfortable with this conversation, so let's see how this goes.
Honestly, I feel like you planned that. You had like, no, we're going to get Mohamed today. He's not really familiar with this topic. And
this is the first meeting with them.
Yeah, so Kobe, being reasonable and saying it in a reasonable way, is, I think, trying to help. He's trying to say, I think what Mohamed is saying. Now, Mohamed isn't doing a good job of saying this, and Kobe is helping him, so maybe Kobe will help them to see eye to eye, and that the friend, Yve's friend, could actually say, oh, okay, well, yeah, I could see that. Mohamed, I'm sorry for doing that.
No, and I understand that, and that's a dynamic that I can't explain to other people. What I don't respect and what I don't appreciate is that during that whole time, you had every opportunity. We even came up to you and said, hey, everything good? So whatever you have to say in this anger that's coming out, you had a chance to speak it. You had a chance to resolve it. And now you're coming at me very, honestly, really aggressively. Yeah, it's possible that the full interaction story between Mohamed and Tatiana, is that her name, Tatiana? Is such that
Eve's friend, she's like, look, okay, we can nitpick about that small detail, but there are 999 other things that he did that was totally out of control, aggressive, controlling, judgmental, unreasonable, even abusive, trying to separate Eve from her friends. So no, I'm not going to apologize for that one tiny little thing that triggered him in terms of his sexuality. It wasn't even that bad. We were just asking him a couple questions. And so maybe that's where she's coming from.
Felt that I am feeling
I just said that I
uncomfortable.
did. So what are you needing from me so you feel better about it?
I didn't know that you were uncomfortable
Right
either.
now, I don't need anything
Okay,
from
then, well,
you,
then we
but
understand.
I expected from Eve to say anything, but she didn't, because I don't think any
couldn't-
woman will accept this question to be asked to her husband.
No, I didn't
from
know.
her friends as well.
Okay, so Tatiana, the friend, is like, I don't know what you need from me. And I'm like, well, Mohamed isn't going to answer that question. Because what he clearly wants is an apology. He wants empathy and compassion. I mean, clearly, that's what he wants. It's obvious. But he says, I don't need anything from you. It's like, well, you don't seem to be exhibiting that, but all right. Hopefully he can mature in that way, because that'll help him out in a whole variety of ways. And we do remember from earlier in the season where with Eve, he is very cold, probably the best way to put it. But with his male friend, he cried a little bit and was way more vulnerable. And so I don't know what's going on there. Is it a gender thing? Who knows? But so he says that, and he says, well, actually, it's because I'm really upset at Eve because she didn't stick up for me. And it's like, well, you haven't been talking about that. We can address that too. And so it sounds like he wants an apology from Eve as well, which is valid. You know, you're meeting with your partner's friends for the very first time. The friends are really coming at you and judging you, and your partner just sits there quietly and does. That happens all the time in the show. And I'm always like, Colt, step in.
Every time that we've talked is just to see, hey, are you really about Eve? Are you really about Eve? And is this what you really want? Because there's a lot of stuff here that is not going to make it easy.
Do you think it's genuine love, though?
Well, I just want to ask of any of the other couples if their person had ever asked them that, or ever told them that they would get another sponsor.
Yeah, it's a good point. But we heard, I don't know if I included this, but for Mohamed, he was saying, and I remember thinking, or someone commented, and I thought, okay, that must be it. Because it just seemed like Mohamed was, on the surface, what it looked like was he's like, well, if you don't want to get married tomorrow instead of a month from now, then we're done. I'm going to find another woman that will marry me, and I'll be able to marry that person, and then I'll get a green card that way. That's the way it sounded, right? And the other cast members reacted similarly to what we all thought was happening, or at least many of us. But I think for Mohamed's, his explanation was that he still wanted to marry Eve, but thought, well, maybe if I find another sponsor, you and I can get married, but someone else will sponsor the paperwork and that sort of thing. That's, I think, what he meant by that. Now, what lawyers will tell me is that that's incredibly naive. Like, you can't just transfer that. You have to go back to your home country. There's a pretty good likelihood that once you reapply with a new sponsor that you'll be rejected, because they'll look at your original sponsorship and see that it fell apart for some unknown reason. And they'll say, well, no, like, you had a chance, you didn't take it. So, they're probably always looking for some excuse to deny. So it was ignorant on his part. And it was incredibly callous, or somehow not reading the room, that Eve would take that as he doesn't want to be with her, doesn't care about her, that kind of thing. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really, really do.